Okay, Malama, thank you very much, for being in our studios, Magoni Studios. We're happy to have you.
Thank you for inviting me, Professor Kpakol. I'm honored.
Thank you very much. Here. Thank you very much. Now, today we want to talk about something that I think is really interesting, and that is the competitiveness of Africa in sort of the global setting. The World Economic Forum has just completed their recent discussions, and they've done their rankings for this year, what they call the Global Competitiveness Index. They put that together.
Right.
And if you look at it, the bottom 37 countries,
right.
So they've got an index that consists of 137 countries.
Right.
The bottom 37, out of the bottom 37, a whopping 27 are African countries. And from you have to get to the 45th position to find an African country. So in the top 44, there is no African country.
Including Nigeria.
Oh my goodness, Nigeria is like number 125.
Wow.
So in that kind of setting, one could easily see that, we are not very globally competitive. And so the question is, how do we market Africa in a setting like this?
First of all, maybe if I may start, but I'd like to start by saying that Africa has indeed given the world something in terms of quality human resources. Okay. We have Africans, we've had Africans, and we do have right now that have served creditably well in very important institutions in the world. The Commonwealth, we had a Secretary General for 10 years, Chief Emeka Anyaoku.
Yes.
People like Professor Gambari at the UN, Emeritus Professor. We have had Ngozi Iweala, the former finance minister. And then if you look at other areas, you've had Africans like the young man who happens to be in Jalili, I think his name is, who was a car designer at General Motors.
Okay.
I think he's kindly come back home, the young man, to try and contribute. Okay. So, and then when you look at also the area of peacekeeping.
And these guys, you're talking mostly Nigerians now.
Oh, they're mostly, they're Nigerians, because they're the ones I know more than
Africans.
That's right, but they're Africans now. Yeah. And then in the area of peacekeeping, African countries, again, especially Nigeria, have sent military police personnel that have helped to keep the peace in quite a number of cases, paying the supreme price, some of the military personnel, and so on and so forth. And we have many medical doctors around the world of African descent, Nigerian descent, doing extremely well, scientists, engineers, and so on. So in that area, I think we have contributed something that should be commended, I believe.
So, these are individuals now. If we put them all together, do they come to a certain mark, a certain threshold, that we would say, okay, we are able to showcase a critical threshold of competent and global type individuals?
I believe so. Even though they're individuals, the sum total of their individual efforts could serve as a mentoring factor. Take, the respected novelist Chinua Achebe, our own Professor Wole Soyinka, the Nobel laureate. You see, it takes individuals to inspire.
Okay.
So you don't need the whole crowd. Look at late President Nelson Mandela. He set the tone. West Africa, people thought when he became president of South Africa, he'll exhibit some kind of vengeance, hatred, and then set the country on fire. But we know what he did. And he set the tone.
He did not do that.
He did not do that, So he set a very positive tone. Indirectly, it was like mentoring some other leader. I don't think African leaders really. I'm surprised, a bit embarrassed, in fact, that they are not patterning their activities along the tone that Mandela has set. So
and Mandela has been so widely respected
in the world up till tomorrow. There is no country or leader around the world, whether in the West or in Africa or Asia, that would not like to associate with Nelson Mandela. So we're very proud of that. But you see in Africa, we've always been talking about potentials.
Yeah.
Instead of potentials, the opportunities are there. We know what the problems are. We know what to do. So at the end of the day, Prof, I think our most basic problem is a disconnect between the leadership and the competence or lack of it, of the leadership at various levels and the populace, For example, again, I'd like to cite Nigeria. I think it applies to most African countries.
Yeah.
We are not inventive.
Okay.
We are not inventive. Take the case of this oil, not oil, the crash, when President Buhari came on board,
the crash of the oil prices.
Exactly.
Okay,
I've gone from a little over $100 per barrel to around $28.
Yeah.
I mean, So instead of Nigerians to be encouraged to become inventive, now I'm not talking about the president, I'm talking about Nigerians in general, our research institutions, our universities. Everybody is just waiting and hoping, the governors, everybody is just waiting and hoping for the oil price to.
But what could they have done?
No, they should become so. In fact, that's why the federal government, I believe, you can see, is diversifying into agriculture.
Okay.
So you don't just sit down and say, "Oh, let's pray and hope that the price goes up again, so that it will be the same." It will be. We are locked into a very vicious cycle, which we should wiggle out of. So we are not inventive, and we have many. And being inventive doesn't mean you have to pass through the university. There are lots of.
Okay, Malam, we are not. I agree with you, but the thing is, why are we not? When we look at Europe, for example, I mean, if you look at this competitiveness report,
right,
you find the European countries, they find the Asian countries there in large numbers. How come they can be competitive and we can't? How come they have things that they sell to us and we are only selling natural products that we pull from the earth's crust?
In fact, that's the challenge. Most of them, these countries that, you mentioned Europe as a whole. Yeah. Most of the countries in Europe and some other countries don't even have anything near the kind of natural resources that we have in Africa.
So maybe that's the problem.
No. What I'm saying is that that's why I keep saying we are not inventive. Okay. We seem to be contented with just selling the raw materials instead of processing the materials and then selling.
But we are not getting
products.
Enough revenue from just selling the raw materials. So then we should have seen that we're still poor in spite of us just selling the raw materials. Right. And then we would have been more inventive, as you said, but we are not. So there is a problem. Is it a cultural problem? Is it a colonial legacy problem? Is it from the slave trade? But what is it? Because we have to find a solution to say this is the reason, so that we can solve it.
Right, yeah. We have to solve the problems if we are going to make any kind of progress, because we haven't really even started seriously, if we are going to be honest. Now, you mentioned, Prof, that is it a cultural problem? Yes. Does it have to do with the slave trade history, and so on and so forth? Let's even assume some of these factors have come into play. Yeah. Take Nigeria. We've been independent for 6 decades now, about 60 years. For heaven's sake, why should we, year after year, decade after decade, we just sit down and brood about, the colonialism? We've been in charge for about 60 years. Yeah. For heaven's sake, if something is not working for you, you should devise other ways and means. I think until fairly recently that President Buhari is trying to plug some loopholes and so on. Unfortunately, I really sympathize with him because I've never heard, tell me, Prof, if you heard, I've never heard of any of the 36 governors pursuing anti-corruption, so is everybody say, corruption is federal government. If you know what is happening at the local government levels and the state level. So that's why I say the leadership sets the tone.
So since we're not very competitive because we're not inventive, we're not producing the other things that we should be producing, we're just consuming finished goods. The only thing we're really ostensibly producing is the raw materials, natural resources. So that's it. So how do we market? You are a very experienced person. You've been all around the world, served in very high places, both in Nigeria and overseas. What, as you see our competition out there, what can we, how do we market ourselves?